to you live from Human Music Studios. This is where the magic happens, one note at a time, and definitely not to exceed 3. Anyways, welcome to a special interview episode with Ryan Elder this week on Interdimensional RSS, the unofficial Rick and Morty podcast.
Hello, everybody. I'm Travis.
Hello, everybody. This is Brandon.
I always feel like I come in hot right there at the top. I really lean into the intro, Brandon.
I definitely don't use the very first thing you say as a reference for the rest of the episode's audio.
Could you imagine if I was at that level for the whole show? It would be completely different. It'd be a completely different podcast.
Oh my god, it would be completely different. It would be Interdimensional Travis yells at the microphone podcast.
Get it together, everybody. Let's talk about Ricks and Mortys.
It's just so aggressive.
Well,
Anyways.
we're very happy that you're joining us again for another episode of Interdimensional RSS. We're excited to present our special interview with Ryan Elder, taking a brief pause from season 1's episode recap shenanigans.
That is the truth. Since we do have basically a bajillion years before season 4 comes back on, we wanted to get some more interviews out, and we don't want to cut too deeply into the seasons themselves, but we thought this is a good breaking point in the middle of the season to just talk to Mr. Elder. Elder. That's his
that
fine.
And he said yes.
Yeah,
He finally was like, let's do it this week. We're like, all right, time for a break.
So yes, so there's timing, there's luck, and availability.
Yeah. It's however you want to spin it. Speaking of spinning things, if you want to reach out to this podcast and our many avenues for doing so, you can hit us up on Twitter over at Rick and Morty Pod. You can check out our subreddit, rickandmortypodcast.reddit.com. Over on Facebook.
Facebook. Are you Swedish? All of a sudden,
Bork.
this is interdimensional. I can't do it.
Yeah, facebook.com/Rick and Morty Podcast. Rick and Morty Podcast @gmail.com. That's the email. And then you can get shirts at apatheticenthusiasm.com/shop and support the show monetarily at patreon.com/Rick and Morty Pod. Thank you to everybody hanging out on the Patreon Discord server this week.
Thank you.
We talked a little bit about nuggets and other things. So yeah, the conversation lives on over on our Discord server, which you can check out if you're a patron. So, Brandon, we got a whopper of an interview.
We do.
It's high quality stuff.
We do, but the first important thing to say for our patrons is, if you're watching this video, we apologize for the shitty facial hair. That is all.
Yeah, and we only apologize to patrons because they're the only ones that get to see our faces. And moving on from that little news nugget, I think let's get into the rest of our semi-pertinent news.
Yeah. The semi-pertinent news.
It's real raspy there. It's real gritty.
Yeah, that's my reboot. Speaking of reboot, the very, very first thing that we have on the list, there's not a whole lot of semi-pertinent news out there, but we do have Oni Press just came out with their Rick and Morty Presents Vindicators, and it's their comic book, and they're doing this like Rick and Morty one shots basically, so like highlighting characters or whatever, just these kind of one-off stories. Anyways, this one-off story this month is about the Vindicators, and they're coming back for an adventure, the all-new Vindicators, and they're assembling. I picked it up. I know, Travis, you're afraid to go to your local comic shop because
it's a fact.
Since you probably have like 3 months worth of polls that you still
It's
have to.
probably like way more than 3 months. I probably owe them a child at this point. No, support your local comic shop, everybody. So I have a question about this issue. Is this like Vindicators 1 or 2? Like, is this like the previous Vindicators, or does this take place after? Is it a completely different dimension?
There's so many. There's so many different dimensions out there, Travis. Infinite universes. So it is a means for them to bring back the Vindicators. And I'm not going to spoil anything for those who want to read the comic, which I highly recommend that you do. But it's really good. There's a lot of different references and characters in it that
All right.
I think fans will appreciate. In a way, it feels Blood Dome Battle League ish.
Yeah, which
Yeah.
I feel gives a lot more credit to Blood Dome Battle League than maybe it deserves.
Yeah. So you're welcome, Oni, for us doing these 3 episodes or whatever. Okay.
All right. Yeah. Well, go pick up that comic and all the other Rick and Morty comics, because it is a great way to sort of fill the Rick and Morty gap. Here's okay. I want to just say this. I don't know that it fits well, but I had this weird like panic attack over the last couple weeks where maybe I think I was listening to Dan Harmon's Harmontown and him like being frustrated about Rick and Morty. No, I think I was reading a tweet, or it was on Instagram, where he's like, I don't make that show anymore. They don't pay me to make that show anymore. Right. And then I had this like freak out, like, what if they just didn't sign a contract? Like, what if they just didn't come to an agreement? Like, and then I hyperventilated for several minutes and then got a Diet Shasta or whatever I did afterwards.
The most popular podcast of mine will have nothing left.
I feel like we would just sit down for a weekend, talk about every other episode, and then just be like, all right, fine. Let's just knock out all of them right now.
Yeah. Okay, moving on. The very last thing before we get on to the main thing, of course, it's the Dan Harmon tweeting minute, when everything's got a minute, including Rice-A-Roni. I think Rice-A-Roni has its own. Rice-A-Roni, they have like a separate rice, whatever. Like Uncle Ben.
Are you talking about Minute Rice?
No. That's
because that's a minute.
Why would anybody? Like, I have an idea for a rice company called 30-Second Rice.
No stealing of material, Brandon.
Nope. There's something about Brandon. Okay, Dan Harmon's tweet minute this week. He says, Genesis's No Son of Mine is the Terminator 2 to Harry Chapin's Cats in the Cradle, except when the son is sinking himself into lava and gives a thumbs up, the dad pees on his thumb.
And that's Dan Harmon tweet minute, everybody. He's made several Terminator 2 references recently. I have a feeling he like watched that movie or something. Like it's present in the forefront of his mind.
It's a great flick. Can't deny James Cameron that.
I wouldn't mind a Terminator 2 episode reference in a future Rick and Morty. That'd be
good.
Some kind of all right.
Let's do it when we're writers for the show, but only for the one-offs.
Well, if this contract never gets signed, we may be writers for the show.
Oh
that
shit!
Never exists. All right. Well,
idea.
that's it for semi-pertinent news, everybody. And we've belabored it long enough, I think. I don't know if I belabored that term correctly.
9 months belabored.
So as we've said several times, Ryan Elder did join us for an interview. We recorded this almost 2 weeks to the day. So it was on the actual release date of the sauce, which we'll mention I think at the top of this interview. Yeah. And then we move quickly past it and into some awesome stuff. Anything else you want to say before we get into the interview, or do you just want to let the interview kind of speak for itself?
I just want Ryan Elder's soothing melodic voice to carry us away.
All right.
Okay. Anyways, So here it is. Here is the main thing with Ryan Elder. Main thing. Da, 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 da. Stealing things from other things. That's Sonic the Hedgehog. Anyways, Ryan Elder, everyone.
Well, hello everybody. Welcome to a very special edition of Interdimensional RSS with a special guest. We are very excited to have Ryan Elder on the show with us. Thanks for being here, Ryan.
Yeah, you guys got it. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
I am so, my palms are so sweaty. Mom spaghetti.
Oh, come on.
Talk. No, it's true, and I'm saying this at the top so I can just get my my awkwardness out of the way. Like I'm so stoked to have you on. We talked to Newton and we talked to Ridley before. They made me nervous, but I'm excited to talk to you. And
oh, come on. Ridley and Newton are studs. I'm nothing.
Well, I will say as a disclaimer, Brandon is really big into music in general, but also the music of the show, and so I think having you on to kind of talk about your process and talk about sort of how you got interested in music and got involved with Rick and Morty and everything, it's something that we're both really excited to kind of dive into and hear your perspective.
Cool. Yeah.
All right.
Sounds good.
So anyway, so welcome. Happy Monday.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're recording this on the infamous Sauce release day. So
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
We'll clear the air of that
Oh
before
Hold on, I have to go get some.
Okay, yeah, we'll wait.
Yeah. Actually, just is your rig portable? Then you could just take us through the drive-through and.
There you go. Yeah, it's not portable, but the downside to getting that sauce is you have to get the chicken nuggets.
That is true.
Well, they have the crispy tenders. Can you get them with crispy?
Oh, I'm sure you can. Yeah, I'm sure you could get it with a cheeseburger if you wanted.
There was I know we're not talking about you and interview stuff yet, but one of our Patreons and patrons in Discord, they said that her McDonald's sold 53 packets to a dude.
Just sold the packet straight up.
Yeah, he just came in, asked for 53, which seems like an obscure number to me, but I don't.
Yeah, it seems like he's trying to defeat some algorithm, like to prove that he's human by choosing a really random number. That's insane. So like they probably have hundreds because they made many packets this time. That guy just like wasted money, right? I mean,
well, I mentioned this, I think because it's in a US promotion.
Yeah,
there's a possibility he might be selling that stuff.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Yeah. Yes. There's people in the UK just dying for that sauce, I'm sure.
Yeah, they're fiending.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Well, they're not rioting, and that's what's important.
Right.
So anyway, enough about the sauce. We talked about that.
You guys did a whole podcast about the sauce.
Yeah, we did. We
did.
Hey, at least it was only in one part, unlike that official one, right?
Yeah. We like to do everything at once.
Yeah.
All right, so Ryan, we want to start off and just, get the basics out of the way. Your history and your background, right?
Sure.
How did you get your start in music? And early on, did you know that it's kind of what you were destined for?
Oh gosh. So yeah, I wouldn't say I thought I was destined. I'm like I started playing violin when I was 5. I started taking violin lessons, and actually in the world of violin, that's about 2.5 years late to start. So I was always like a little bit behind the good players that started when they were like 3. But I played violin all growing up. My mom would bring me to lessons every other week, and it was great. I mean, I enjoyed it. But at some point, violin kind of became a chore, and then I discovered that girls like guys who play guitar. So in high school, I started playing guitar.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, and in addition to thinking, oh, a girl's going to fall in love with me, which didn't really happen, based on my guitar skills, at least. Um, I also was like, I get to play songs I like instead of playing obscure classical songs that my teacher wants me to learn. So in the meantime, my dad he was like a amateur recording artist. He made like an album of his own when I was in high school. And so he had all this like recording gear and drum machines and keyboards and stuff. And so at the same time as I was taking lessons growing up, I was like writing like pop songs, boy band songs with my dad and my brothers and stuff, which I don't have a recording of, but God, I would die to hear.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
So, and then when I went to college, I majored in music with sort of a focus in composition and violin performance. And after college, I took an unpaid internship at a recording studio in LA that did music for commercials. Okay. I thought I was going to be a music engineer, like a recording engineer. And I thought they did records there. So the first day I show up and I found out they did commercials, it was very strange. I was, I'm doing this for 3 months. But what I found was that like doing commercials is actually really fun as a composer because you're doing something totally different every day. And your skills at all styles of music get like really, really good, like really fast. And as an intern, they let me spend time in the studio and demo on spots like for my own uses. And eventually they brought me on as like a dub room assistant, someone who just like drove tapes all over town. And this was in 2000, 2001. So people were still using tapes and CDs
and
yeah.
The MP3 was like just something that those computer guys on
totally
were messing with.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I had MP3s, but I was just fresh out of college, so like I was way ahead of the game by having MP3s on my computer compared to my coworkers at the studio. So I did that for a while, and in the meantime, I like at night I would just like demo on their commercials. And about a month into my time there, I did a Juicy Juice commercial that went final.
Nice.
And that was like, oh, maybe I can do this.
That big Juicy Juice break.
I know. It was my big break. It was a hamster playing soccer, I believe. But I really enjoyed that and I just became a staff composer for that company. They're called Emoto Music now. At the time, they're called Ad Music. And I still work with them, actually. I'm still like kind of on their roster of composers, but I was a staff composer there from 2001 until 2011, basically. So like 10 years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And right when I kind of decided to go freelance and focus more on TV is when I did the Rick and Morty pilot. So I got super lucky. Like about as lucky
at the right spot.
Yeah, I know. About as lucky as a composer can get, for sure. To not only get to work on a show, right away that's all my own, but also a show that's good and I like.
And so while you're at Ad Music, now Emoto, you were doing the Channel 101 stuff at the same time.
Oh,
right?
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. So at night I'd work all day, sometimes work at night, but and then when I had free time, I would do these Channel 101 videos, which just for your listener real quick, Channel 101 is kind of like it's like a monthly film festival where people submit 5-minute television shows and the audience watches 10 shows and they vote for their 5 favorites. Top 5 vote getters get to make the next episode. The rest are canceled. It's like a mini TV network. It's really, really fun, totally free of any corruption of money. So people just make everything for the love of it. And that's where I met Justin and Dan. Actually, Dan started Channel 101, and Justin was like one of its early stars. So I met those guys there, yeah.
Wasn't like Doc and Marty and stuff? Wasn't that like Channel 101 stuff early on?
Yep, Doc and Marty was a Channel 101. I believe it was a failed pilot, meaning it screened, but it didn't get voted back. So he didn't get to make a second episode, which I guess when you watch it, I mean, it brought the house down. Everything Justin ever did brought the house down. But some people were like, ugh, it's so gross. I can't vote for that. And he just like wanted to make the audience. He loves going to the screening and watching people just die about how uncomfortable they are.
Yeah.
And so like that's always been his MO. And I loved his stuff. Like I always voted for his stuff. And I remember just thinking like this guy is literally, it's going to be impossible for him not to make something successful someday. And he's also just an amazingly cool dude. So I started hanging out with him like just as friends for a long time. And and I did a bunch of helped him with a bunch of pitches for Fox and uh Cartoon Network. We did a pitch actually. I don't know if you guys know this. You probably do. The theme song for Rick and Morty was originally a pitch that we did for a different Cartoon Network show called Dog World that
Yeah,
they
I
passed on.
just like looked that up today, actually.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah. So yeah, so like I did a bunch of stuff with Justin over the years, and I remember when I first saw that Rick and Morty animatic, we were working on it, and he's like, I want, the network's gonna pay for us to do this animatic. We have a budget, and I was like, oh sweet, fine, let's all get paid for once.
Yeah.
And the animatic was so good, and like it's pretty much the pilot as it is now. The only scene that changed really was the very opening. The first animatic had a different opening. I mean, there are obviously little changes here and there, but all of the really good stuff, they're bureaucrats. I don't respect them. They're like, that joke has been in there since the beginning. So like all of the good stuff from the pilot was there. And I just remember thinking like, this is the one, this is going to be the one. I don't know. Like maybe this is just looking back with hindsight is 2020, but it just seemed so good.
And so much optimism that just happened to pay off that time.
Yeah. And I remember like when we finally made the real pilot, they had this like party, like they did the fully animated pilot. Adult Swim hadn't picked up the show yet, but we did this party or whatever. And I remember just watching it fully animated pretty much for the first time for me, because I score to the animatics, which we can get into, but I remember just people talking to other people and just being like, yeah, this is one of the best pilots that we've ever seen. It was just like so, and you guys know, like the pilot is a lot of people's least favorite episode.
Yeah.
I think we've talked about that a few times on the podcast. And oftentimes for me, like if I'm trying to introduce the show to somebody new, I'm almost hesitant to show them the pilot right off the bat, just because the show builds so quickly from there that like it does a really good job of introducing who everybody is, but like it's probably not the best episode in season 1.
That's a really good discussion. I think a lot of people like to have is like, where do you start people? And the answer is honestly, you could probably pick just about any episode, and if they're gonna like the show, they're gonna like any episode, is my opinion. But I lean towards Meeseeks. I think Meeseeks is a great start, because you gotta throw people in the deep end a little bit.
Yeah. And I, knowing that we recorded the Meeseeks episode yesterday, and rewatching it, knowing that we were going to talk to you today, I was listening to some of the background music. It was like when they go into the adventure world, and it's got that like that whimsical theme in the background. How difficult is it, or how many, I guess, cues do you have to come up with for Justin Dan, like on average on an episode, for like even a particular segment of a show?
Yeah, so I think I figured this out last year, and I've kind of forgotten, but the show has on average like 11 to 13 minutes of music per episode, and that's anywhere between, I think like Pickle Rick had 10 cues, which isn't a lot, and then some of the other episodes have more like 18 to 20 cues, and they're not long. Most of them are short. Like even the sort of like emotional moments are only like 20 seconds long often. So it's not a music heavy show, which is kind of the point. especially a lot of the family interactions, like it's always been the case that Justin and especially Dan don't want the music to get in the way at all. Dan's really, really big on staying out of the way for the comedy, especially.
Mm-hmm.
It was like Dan's idea to play the whole Pickle Rick kills a bunch of rats fight totally dry. Like that has no music. It has music leading up to it, but the whole him killing all the rats was like completely dry. I actually scored that whole thing, and Dan was like, no, we're gonna do this dry, and it was totally smart because that once you get the sound effects in there, it's like there's no room for music anyways. So one of the reasons I think that Dan and I work so well together is that I also kind of feel like the more I can get away with not scoring stuff, the better, actually, because that I mean, for me, that's like the strength of the show is more evident then. But a lot of stuff, definitely benefits from music. So
yeah, and I think that in most media, there's this balance of having music that enhances a scene, not necessarily, it doesn't drown it out, it doesn't take the focus of a scene necessarily.
Yeah, I mean, especially nowadays, the sort of modern way to score, especially TV, not animated, well, kids animation, but a lot of TV now is wall to wall music, and they just want music to just like be pulsing underneath. You don't really hear it, but it's there creating a mood, I guess. And I'm not a huge fan of that. If two people are just talking to each other and there's not much at stake, I don't need to hear music, but that's just the way it's done. And so I'm lucky that I get to work on something where I get to use my vision of where I think the music should go. Like I basically get the animatic with no music at all, and I go through myself and choose where I want the music to be. And that is extremely rare in the business of television composing. Most of the time, you at least sit down with the show creators and they tell you, I want music here, I want music here, I want music here. But Dan and Justin and I have just really worked it out where they trust me and I know where they're going to want music almost every time.
Absolutely. And I think that's I'm not in that career field, but I feel like that's a fairly unique way of doing it, and a really powerful way, especially as a composer, to have that kind of freedom and the trust of the showrunners as well.
Yeah, I mean, my ultimate goal is to serve their vision of the show, right? So if they have notes, of course I'm going to address the notes. But it is very, very cool to sort of get that first crack at my vision of the music that's based on their vision. So, ultimately, I need to serve the story. I need to tell the story. I need to make sure that I don't get in the way, and that when there are moments where the music needs to step forward and be a huge part of the show, that I am ready and willing to do that as well.
Which this show does have some very iconic scenes and iconic songs where really the music sort of moves into the forefront. How does that differ for you when the writers come and say, hey, we want them to, perform on stage for a bunch of floating heads or some sort of thing like that? What kind of unique challenges does that present for you?
Yeah, I mean, so you're talking about Get Swifty. Let's talk for the context that you're talking about. Actually, Goodbye Moon Man would probably work better just for. Okay. I'll tell you why later, but yeah, when they come to me and are like, we want to do a song, right? And or a lot of times I'll just get the script and it'll say, and the line producer will say, hey, there's a song on page 32 of the script. We need that before we start doing the animatic. And so I'll get that and I'll look, and for Goodbye Moon Man, it just said like a David Bowie, Fart sings a David Bowie style song.
One of the best sentences ever written.
I know, something like that. Yeah. And then there's the lyrics that were there. So the writer had written the lyrics and they were in the script. So at that point I was just like, all right, let me just listen to as much David Bowie as I can, which God forbid, terrible, terrible curse. No, it was amazing. So I just listened to a ton, and then I keyed in on some of the ones that were definitely more, because I knew it was going to be real spacey and weird. So I keyed in on some of the real traditional, like classic David Bowie
Yeah, the Ziggy Stardust era.
Ziggy Stardust, Life on Mars. Yeah. What's the Ground Control to Major Tom? What's that called?
Yeah, Space Oddity.
Space Oddity, yeah. So I always I always forget the names of things. Anyways,
Rocket Man, I think
yeah.
is Elton John, Dave Bowie. I mean, they're the same artist pretty much.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I'm listening a ton of David Bowie, and then I just start messing around with my guitar. And that one, yeah, it's cool. Like the process for that is I start way earlier whenever there's a song. Another one that I started earlier was the Tiny Rick episode. There's 2 songs in that one that Tiny Rick sings. So those, they needed at least something rough to do the animatic to for timings.
Mm-hmm.
So I, whipped those together, and then I'll revisit them later when I'm finalizing the episode, but that's usually honestly like 6 to 8 months later. The process is really protracted. I know I talk to my other composer friends, and they just can't believe how much time I have per episode. It's like an insane amount of time because there's so many moving parts in animation that there's just the music. I get the animatic, and then I have like 6 months before we have locked colors. So I have, for each episode, I could spend, if we're doing 10 episodes, I could spend, 2-3 weeks on each episode, easy.
And I did actually have a question on that, because I read your interview with Sync Blog that you did back in August.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the same thing with animation compared to live action taking so much. It gives you so much more time to score. Than live action does.
Yeah, you'd think my music would be better, right? No, it's like
that's the question, because you say like the animation, because it gives you so much time, that it gives you time to second guess yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I mean, how do as an artist, as a musician, how do you counteract that? Do you not just suck it up?
So when I was in high school, I had a literature teacher, or writing teacher, who always used to say, there comes a time when you have to bless it and call it good. And I try to live by that. Like, I could just sit there and tweak and tweak and tweak and tweak, and then I would never get anything done. And so at some point, like, I'm like, okay, this is good, I'm going to move on. If it's bad, I won't say that, right? Like, I'm not going to call something good that's bad. But what's the other phrase? Good is the enemy, or perfect is the enemy of good, or whatever. Like, the more you think about trying to spend time perfecting something, the less likely you are to actually end up with something. And Dan,
with anything really, like,
yeah, Dan talks about this a lot too, when he talks about like how to get into writing and how to be a better TV writer. And Dan doesn't always practice what he preaches on this, but the idea that, like, yes, you iterate to a point, you go back and you redo to a point, but like, you have to at some point just be like, okay, this is the marginal returns I'm going to get from working on this again are so small that I might as well just like call it good at this point.
Yeah. And he's also said the alternate, which I think can relate to live action, which is working kind of under the gun and under pressure. And so I wanted to ask also that the higher tempo of live action, do you find that your quality suffers, or because it forces you to bless it and call it good earlier, you get?
Yeah, it's a good question. So the way I sort of schedule myself with Rick and Morty is I really just don't give myself that much time to do stuff, So once I'm done with a cue, or once I think a cue is good enough, like, I don't revisit it until it's ready to be mixed. So I would say that my work flow is very similar for live action and animation. It's just that for animation, once I'm done, it sits on the shelf for a while. Whereas with live action, it goes. I did a show with on YouTube Red called Good Game, starring the Game Grumps, if you guys know who they are.
It was heard of them.
Yeah,
the show flew under the radar a little bit because it was on YouTube Red, but it's pretty good actually. Dan Harmon produced it, and he's in one of the episodes. But that was live action, and that one was one where I was like writing cues, I think 2 or 3 days before we mixed and put it out the door. So it's pretty insanely fast. And you know, I would say like I did a lot of work in a short amount of time, but once I was done with the cue, like it was done and I moved on, which is similar to what I do with Rick and Morty. It's just they sit on the shelf, like I said. So I would say, you know, my workflow doesn't change too much. Another cliche that I heard from a coworker a while back was, if you wait to the last minute, it only takes a minute to do, which I also sometimes live by as well.
I'm putting that on my board, my whiteboard at work tomorrow. Yeah, that's you talked about being in advertising and working on some of those jingles. Do you think that prepared you for more of this kind of rapid paced? You know,
yeah. So definitely prepared me for like very quick deadlines. I mean, we used to get ads. We used to get requests for demos on an ad where they would say like, can we hear stuff in 3 hours? Like, and we're making like record quality songs in 3 hours. Like that's very rare, but it did happen. So yeah, the turnaround was very fast on ads. I mean, you're writing 30-second pieces of music. So, you know, you can't spend too much time. And then the other thing that really, I would say that working on ads helped me, especially for Rick and Morty, is a wide variety of genres. Like I did it all when I was doing ads. I barely ever listened to like say jazz or something growing up. But when I was working on ads at Emoto, I was like, sometimes I would have to write a jazz tune. It just is like, there's no way around it. So you learn to either fake it as best as you can, or you know, you're not going to succeed. So after you fake it enough, you actually can do it.
That the life of a podcaster also.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Was there ever a song that you were given or that you were asked to work on for Rick and Morty that posed a particular challenge? Like they're maybe looking for a specific genre or doing something a little bit different that stood out as being more of a challenge for you?
So the one cue that always comes to mind, it's not really a song, but in terms of like taking the longest to nail down, was in the pilot, the scene where Morty is in like the numbers. He's like dreaming in class, and you know, Jessica is there, and the background music for that, I think I did like 5 or 6 different takes on it, and it was always just like saying too much. I think I always had like a rhythm or a beat, and eventually I think what we ended up with doesn't have much of a beat to it. So that one was a bit tricky. Now I know, like, that was, you know, very early on. I hadn't worked with Dan that much. So now I know how to parse Dan's notes a little more. And when I think if I had to do that again, I would have gotten it quicker now. But another thing where I remember having to at least ask, what the hell is this, was the script just said, or the show itself just said, you know, Davin turns on African Dream Pop. You know, and it's like, what is African Dream Pop? You know, like it was invented for the show. So I have to create a whole genre in one song. And that was a little daunting, certainly. I think I picked Dan's brain a little about that, but
for African Dream Pop, for like that song specifically, how did you start? How did your process start? Like with a MIDI keyboard in front of you and just like.
Well, yeah, every cue starts with a MIDI keyboard in front of me. but yeah, I think the first thing I did for that was I was like, okay, I'm gonna just try to nail down the African part first, right? So I pulled up a lot of, like, I have a bunch of recordings of African percussion, different, and I think I pulled from like all over Africa. So like if you listen to it, there's like, if you're like a real African music nerd, you'll notice like there's stuff from South Africa, there's stuff from East and West Africa. Like there's styles of playing that don't ever go together in Africa because if Africa's gigantic, right? Like
yeah.
It's like, you know, West African music and East African music is like at its core as different as like, you know, Celtic music is to bluegrass, right? Like
Okay.
they definitely have influenced each other, but like they are definitely noticeably different.
Yes.
So I just kind of threw it all together. I was like, okay, let's just make it weird, right? Like, first of all, it's a joke that he's playing African dream pop. So the music should not take itself too seriously. And then I also had these these libraries of African singers that I had just like little clips of.
Right.
And I started putting them in, and I didn't like, they actually were like singing too earnestly or something. So I put auto tune on them and put them in a different key, and it actually makes them sound like just poppier and lighter.
Yeah.
So I think that worked out really well. And then I started adding like beats and stuff that are like more pop oriented, keyboards and all the sounds that all the trappings of pop music. And especially dream pop, which is like real synthy and washy and
Yeah. The stuff that if you wanted to be on shrooms, you're like, oh, cool.
yeah.
Let me do. I've not done them. I'm assuming. I have a
Right.
pink
Yeah,
Floyd
of
poster in
course.
the back, but
Yeah.
no relation. Um, so I wanted to ask about recurring motifs. As
Mhm.
you, I feel that one of the main ones by Blonde Redhead for the Damaged Coda. That's
Yep.
that's Evil Morty's kind of
Yeah.
recurring motif. Do you have any recurring instruments or sound effects or any motifs for the characters in the show that are kind of maybe not super noticeable?
So that's called like Peter and the Wolfing, when you have like an instrument or a motif for each character. I
Play the same
personally
music when Darth Vader comes in. All that kind
exactly,
of
yeah.
stuff.
That, I mean, it works for something like Star Wars, right?
Mm-hmm.
I set out when I initially set out on the show, I kind of avoided that. I think sometimes that can be kind of cheesy,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like you definitely have to be very careful. I kind of did it in the documentary I did about Dan, actually. Like there's a theme for Dan and a theme for Spencer. But I didn't really do it for Rick and Morty, mainly because I just didn't want to draw that much attention to the music when it was playing in the background. So
Right.
like when Rick and Morty are on an adventure and they're talking, like I don't really want I don't want you to notice it. I want the music to tell the story and aid the story, but I don't want people to be like, oh, the music. You know, that's just my way of doing it.
Yeah,
Uh, but
for the Damaged Coda, as an
yeah,
example, it was used between season 1 and then again in season 3.
right,
So
right.
there was that distance to kind of build that suspense, and only when Evil Morty's revealed, President Morty,
Yeah.
and that music plays again.
Yeah, I mean it's so effective, right? Like
Yeah.
so I think like they use that tune because Justin loves that song. And it does, like, the mood of it is perfect for that moment in season 1. And it's unexpected too, right? You kind of don't expect the show to take that kind of a turn musically. And so setting it up, it becomes really iconic in that first season episode because A, it's unexpected at the time, and B, the tune is great, and C, like the mood of it is just so moody. It's so dramatic.
Yeah.
You know, it's almost emotional, but not in like a sappy way. So it really worked for that. And I remember the first time I saw the animatic with that song on it, I was like, holy shit, we got to get this.
Yeah.
And then it was at that point, it becomes a no brainer to use it again when you bring back that character, right? Like, I think the question for the writers then becomes like, how do you bring back Evil Morty in a way where using that song the moment he shows up is really effective, right? You can't just have him walk into a scene like a sitcom and have that music start playing, like, or like a wrestling match, like, oh, I hear Evil Morty's music, he's
Here he
coming out,
comes.
you know. Like you can't do it so cheesy. Like it has to be, the mood has to be the mood again, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. The only other one I think of is maybe Jerry's human music song.
Yeah. I did bring that back. Yeah. I just for fun, I did, like, in the Jerry daycare episode, there's like elevator music kind of in the lobby of Jerry daycare that I used human music as like the sort of basis of. So
Perfect.
you can hear that. It's pretty far in the back mix wise, which is good. That's the point. But yeah, there's also kind of a thing I do. I don't really do. There's a style that I use for moments that are uh, heavy and emotional, that I have done several different tracks for, but they all kind of are in the same vein. And the two parts that really stick out for me are when Jerry and Doofus Rick are like saying goodbye. There's a music playing there that is like, it's really earnest and dramatic. It's like a little dramatic piano. It's kind of like the blonde redhead thing, actually, but maybe not as menacing.
Hmm.
And then when Rick is reading Unity's letter in season 2, I have a similar kind of a vibe for that one that's got like a piano thing. And then I sort of used that style to create the entire sound of the show for the Citadel's episode, the Tales from the Citadel.
Yeah,
So
yes.
that episode has a totally different score than any other episode in the show. It's very minimal, very piano driven, totally different than like say your average adventure episode where I go big and orchestral and menacing and dark. Yeah, the Citadel episode, totally different score.
But
And
that's such a standout episode, and
Yeah.
it sets apart from the rest of the series in such a unique way that it, like, doing something completely different with the score, I think just elevates that
Yeah.
feeling of doing something that isn't a normal Rick and Morty episode.
Yeah,
If
I
there is
mean,
such a thing.
yeah, there's a melancholiness to the entire episode, like everybody's kind of just going through life, right? Like there's these little stories about the different Ricks and Mortys, and they're just kind of going through life in a way. And so I wanted the music to capture that and really play to that melancholy without being too in your face.
Two things on that. It opens up with "In the City," Joe Walsh.
Yeah, yeah,
And you have the Tales from the Citadel track, and that folks can go to your SoundCloud to listen to.
Yeah,
which
yeah.
is very, it's very In the City-ish. It did.
Yeah. It's got kind of a rock. I think it's similar tempo. Yeah. In the City was on the animatic. They weren't always sure they could afford it.
Yes.
So I tried to beat the champ. I couldn't beat the champ.
God, Joe. Come on.
I was
Joe.
never going to beat Joe Walsh. So I tried to do something that, in any case, I wrote that first, and then I used that as the basis for the rest of the cues in the episode. So a lot of the melody elements and harmonic elements in the rest of the episode are based on that title I did that got replaced by Joe Walsh.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to say was Tales from the Citadel is, to me, kind of Chinatown-ish.
Oh, totally.
And you actually, you've said before that one of your greatest influences for the show is Jerry Goldsmith, who of course scored Chinatown originally, and he also did Twilight Zone. He's just done a ton of stuff. What is it about Jerry Goldsmith's work that inspires you so much? And in Rick and Morty, where are some of these kind of influences that we can see Goldsmith's work?
Yeah, I would say his Planet of the Apes score is probably one of my biggest influences. He's not the first to do this, but he's definitely one of the first people to really make avant-garde classical music mainstream film composing. And his techniques, he used a lot of crazy recording techniques on the Planet of the Apes stuff. There's really cool, like these old effects boxes that people weren't really using in film yet then. Like he's putting flutes through delays and cool stuff. And he was just really doing really inventive shit for a movie that is like, a classic now. But at the time, kind of, as far as I know, kind of pooped the bed. But like his score for that is just incredible. And so there's a lot. I mean, whenever I get stuck on Rick and Morty and I'm like, I don't know what to do for this scene, or I'm just doing another action cue and it just sounds the same as everything else. Like, how can I get inspired? I'll listen to that Planet of the Apes score. And I will say, like, in terms of Chinatown, I purposefully did not listen to that for Tales from the Citadel because I didn't want it to be so on the nose.
Yeah.
You know, if we did a Planet of the Apes episode of Rick and Morty, you know, I wouldn't try to do Planet of the Apes score. That's just like too much, you know?
You'd go listen to The Omen with a lot of
Right,
that
sure, yeah.
choral stuff.
Yeah, I would find some other way to do, you know, and I wouldn't say that my score particularly sounds like the Planet of the Apes score, but there is sort of, I don't know, his stuff is just very inspiring. The way his mind worked in a way that is just totally different than the average film score. I mean, he's a legend.
Absolutely, absolutely. What I throw this out there, other than Planet of the Apes, do you have any other favorite movie scores?
I always jokingly say my favorite movie score is No Country for Old Men because it literally has like 30 seconds of a drone and that's it.
I was thinking There Will Be Blood, which is Johnny
that score is fucking amazing. Yes. And it's like, yeah, Johnny Greenwood, amazing. Yeah, so everyone loves this, but I love the Solaris score, the Clint Mansell Solaris score. It's so overused now as like a reference point in scoring, but it's incredible. The Lord of the Rings score, huge influence for me on Harmon Quest. Literally the gold standard of fantasy scoring now. Like you literally can't do a fantasy movie without being influenced by that score now, I feel like.
Yeah. With film scoring, and I know I'm kind of jumping back and forth here, but you studied music. You got your degree with an emphasis on composition. Did you take any kind of electives or in film composition to see how sound music design fits into film, TV?
I did not. My college music program, you know, God bless them, they're much better now. They weren't that good when I went there. I went to that college because it was super liberal and it was in my backyard. I didn't think about, I should go somewhere with a good music program. I just was like, I want to go to a good liberal arts college and I want the students to be like really fucking liberal. And it was great for that. And you know, the music department was really good for me personally, because at the time I wouldn't have thrived at a high stakes music school where you got to practice all the time. Like I needed to be able to go there and just have my own thing and do my own thing. And McAllister College, where I went in St. Paul, definitely allowed me to just have the freedom to kind of explore what I wanted to do with music on my own. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, was it a school where they're like, good, you know what an A looks like on a sheet of music?
No, it was definitely like a real, like I got a real music education, but you know, I took an electronic music class that was self-graded, for example. You know, some of the electives were, you know, more for fun than anything, but you know, the theory classes were really, really hard. I had a really good professor in my theory classes and pushed me really hard in terms of that, but it wasn't like, there wasn't a lot of emphasis on you need to play perfectly and you need to do recitals every other week and, you know, like a real music school will burn you out fast if you're not into it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. When I graduated high school, I went to Glendale Community College, and I wanted to major in music, and but I didn't study music as a kid. You know, I played guitar, I played bass, and I could do those things, not trained in any way other just reading tabs, right? Guitar tabs, and I got to college, and I was just so kind of imposter syndrome, or just it was overpowering how more talented people were out there doing it, and I thought I can't compete with these guys. They know what they're doing with music. So yeah.
Oh man, I feel like that every time I talk to another professional composer. Yeah, I totally can empathize with that for sure. Incidentally, my wife was a teacher at Glendale Community College. She taught ESL for a couple of years.
Oh, awesome.
And Dan Harmon went there. It was the inspiration for Community. He went there for like
Oh.
one semester, one class or something.
You hear that, everyone? I have a
You went
direct.
to the same college, yeah. But yeah, I totally know what you mean. Yeah, like imposter syndrome fuels me. Like I draw a lot of like I draw a lot of my energy to be better and to do as well as I can because I'm afraid I'm going to get found out. And I need it, you know, like I need it to do my job. But I know that for other people, it's like, oh, I just want to deal with this. So I totally get it. Like, it's not a fun feeling to feel like everyone else is doing it right and you're just faking it. But that's like kind of how everyone feels.
Yeah.
You know, like I guarantee you all those people you thought were awesome were probably just thinking like, oh God, everyone else is so awesome here and I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah, I'm absolutely sure that's what it is. And I think I feel that the kind of power of finding other creative folks and kind of grouping up to me helps alleviate that sense of, oh, I'm not good enough, because my weaknesses are other folks' strength.
Totally.
And so on and so forth.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You know, I'm co-composing a new show, a DreamWorks show called, it's based on the Boss Baby movie. It's called Boss Baby Back in Business. It comes out, I think, in April on Netflix. It's for kids, but I'm co-composing it. And it's actually a really good example of how like two composers together can do something that one composer could not. The direction that they wanted was 30 Rock score meets Jay-Z.
Oh.
So
right.
like I can do the Jay-Z thing in my sleep. Like I did sound for hip hop shows. I wrote beats for friends. Like I know hip hop pretty well. But the 30 Rock thing is definitely not my strength. Like I'm not a jazz guy. However, my co-composer is like a serious jazz guy. Like he's got the chops. So together we can really do this show justice. And it's like one of the great things about this partnership that I'm learning is that yeah, like you don't have to do everything yourself. Like you can ask for help. And you know, neither of us could have done, at least in the beginning. Now both of us could probably do the show because we know how it's done. But in the beginning, I don't think that either of us could really have done the show as well as we did together.
And I did. That kind of leads to a question I had, which is, you know, collaborating with your co-composer.
I want to say his name actually, but I feel weird just calling his name's Ben Bromfield, amazing composer, young guy. This is his first show with his name in the credits, but he's done a ton of work with other composers. Amazing guy, amazing composer.
Ben Bromfield.
Yeah. Look for him. He's going to be more famous than me by a wide margin at some point.
Well, I don't know. You'll always be number one. So okay, so you have Ben Bromfield, who you're co-composing the show with. I did want to ask, you know, so asking for help, and was leading to a question I wanted to ask was, do you prefer working alone generally when you're developing or writing music?
Logistically, it is easier to just do things on my own. Especially when I'm the final say in if the music is good enough or not. But there is something really exciting about writing music with another person in the room. At Emoto, we used to do this all the time. Whenever we had like a spot where we needed to submit like 4 different versions, me and 3 of the other staff composers would all just like do our charts. Like we'd write our track, basically a sketch of all our tracks on our own, and then we would come together and like I would play guitar on everyone's track and the other composer would play bass, and we'd hire a drummer, and you know, we just would like all throw down together on each other's tracks in an effort to like for one of us to win it. Because you know, like the company, it's better if the company wins it than it is if I win it. You know what I mean? Right. At that point, because they pay my salary. So like, and that was like really exciting. I definitely missed that music. Collaborative music is like one of the most uh purely like fun and exhilarating things that I've experienced in my life. Now, that being said, when you have a deadline, it's a lot easier to just whip it out on your own in your own studio. Like I have my home studio, and it's just like I'll just shut the door and get it done. And that, so like, it just depends. Like if you have time to experiment, man, there's nothing more fun than getting some musicians together and just throwing out ideas.
Do you in the process of writing, when you're shutting yourself in the room, or however you do it, do you, when you're like coming up with an idea,
Mhm.
I'll throw this out there. So, I dabble in recording crappy stuff all the time, and so when I'm putting something together, I'll send it to Travis, or I'll make my wife listen to it,
Mhm.
uh, and I'll be like, "Is this okay? Does this sound all right?" And
Mhm.
then they humor me, and they're like, "Yeah, it's good. Whatever, man. I don't care." Uh, so I mean, do you do that, or do you say, I'm gonna get to like a 85-90% solution with this song before I let anybody listen to it?
Yeah, the danger with letting someone listen to something that is unfinished is that they don't have the imagination to imagine what it's like finished, right?
Yeah.
Um, Now, that's not a danger when you're showing it to your wife because she's your wife,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
she loves you.
Yeah.
It is a danger when you're
Question.
dealing with clients
Question.
who are paying you,
Okay.
Yes.
because as soon as they go, they might get worried that you're not going to get it. If they hear a work in progress, they might not be able to imagine what the final product is going to be like based on what you're showing them. Now, some are, and some want to hear early works in progress, and that's great. Like I worked with the director on the Harmontown movie documentary who was very much interested in hearing works in progress, and he had tons of good feedback based on them. So it just, you have to. I think it depends on what you're doing, but in your case, like what you're doing, yeah, I do show stuff to my wife, but I learned a while ago actually that I if if she has ideas and I don't use them, I both feel bad and she feels bad. So at this point, I don't like, I will get her opinion on stuff if I'm stuck. She's one of the first people I go to for sure. But another thing is like going to another composer is really, really valuable because they're going to have a perspective you don't, and they're going to be able to speak to you in your language. I always say composers give the best notes because they tell you, like, in bar 35, do a G sharp major instead of a, E flat minor. Like they'll give you really specific notes because they can speak your language. They know specifically what you're talking about. So
Right.
in a lot of ways that can be more useful. However, you know, maybe your wife will just say like, I don't know, it's too dark, which is an opinion that another composer isn't going to give you
Yeah.
because it's so general. But that can be a really useful opinion.
I feel like you were there for that discussion with my wife.
Hey, I mean, I've had my own.
Brandon, that's a little dark. Maybe you shouldn't say that word. It's
Yeah, yeah. What are you trying to accomplish with this?
like, oh God, Chelsea, stop making me feel stupid.
I'm adjusting my mic. Sorry, you can cut these out.
It's cool. That's our duck break. It sounds like we have a duck break every episode now.
Oh, good. All right. I have a pet duck here.
Yeah.
Studio duck.
There you go.
Duke the duck.
Duke the duck. Yeah.
Duke the D-O-O-K. Anyway, whatever. Uh,
Poor guy.
poor Duke. Don't credit where credit is due, Duke. Uh, okay. So on Rick and Morty,
Mhm.
we didn't want necessarily we didn't want, or maybe we just didn't ask it right away, about you coming up with a theme song.
Mhm.
We know that the Doctor Who is a major inspiration for that.
Yeah.
But But can you just talk to us about the kind of inception and creation of?
Sure, yeah. So, like I said earlier, it was for a show called Dog World, and the original conceit of that show was that Justin was going to have like a character narrate sort of the basic premise of the show during the theme song.
Yeah.
So that's why the song has this like big long ramp up where you don't hear a melody. It's like this big long building thing, is because Justin was gonna be like, my name is Michael Jenkins and I'm my brother and I were trapped in a dog world. Like he was gonna do a thing during that, right? Like explaining the premise of the show. So when we did the dog world thing, the theme song it's not exactly like what it is for Rick and Morty, because I think I lengthened it for Rick and Morty maybe, but that what you hear on Rick and Morty is very similar to what was on the Dog World pitch. And Justin was talking over it in the beginning, and then it kicks in with the melody and kind of has. And one of the things that he said to me was like he's like, I really like Doctor Who. I really like Farscape in terms of like what I want the theme to be, because both like Dog World was about these kids that get transported to another alternate dimension where dogs are like humans and humans are pets to these dogs. Actually, the Snuffles episode of Rick and Morty,
a 12-15 minute board driven show.
Yeah,
exactly. That's a reference to Dog World. That joke is totally a reference to Dog World. I think Justin was still kind of holding on to hope that show would sell, but I don't know. In any case, yeah. So that theme, obviously, I definitely took the Doctor Who thing and ran with it. And it just like, I wanted it to have super cinematic. Like we talked about, like Justin was like, I want it to feel so big, so cinematic. And I know that Justin likes, he doesn't know this, but he really likes tritones in music, which is like a flat. It's hard to explain without getting super geeky, but it's an interval. It's a distance between two notes that gives you a really specific kind of a vibe. The Simpsons has it in their theme song. The Simpsons, it resolves up to the 5, right? Then you get a little music theory lesson. It's also like the classic example is in West Side Story. Maria, I just met a girl named Maria. He's riding that tritone up to the 5th, resolving it up to the 5th. So I knew Justin from other stuff I'd done that Justin is like, he responds to the tritone. So I was trying to mess around with it. And I don't think I actually used it specifically. I don't do a tritone in the Rick and Morty theme, but I wanted to have something that had that kind of sort of a little off vibe to it. Right. And I messed around with all these synths, and I have like all these software synths that I use to get these sounds. But like when I found that theremin-y kind of sound,
yeah,
and I put this like cool delay on it, and it was just like, oh, this is really cutting above the orchestra. Like you can really hear it above the orchestra. And so I ran with that. And like I also knew I wanted it to have this steady build. Like just like keep building, and then it ends at the peak.
Yeah. Yeah. I gotta say real quick, the theremin sound is one of my, I don't know if it's my affinity for old school sci-fi. I just love that theremin. And if anybody wants to give me one for free, I would
yeah. Oh man, I just saw this professional theremin player. Hang on 1 second, because I have her card like 2 feet away. I want to tell you her name. Hold on 1 second. Just like pause it or whatever. Edit this out. I don't know.
Oh, yeah. I'm marking it 58 minutes or so. Minutes.
All right. Yeah, this woman, Carolina Ike, she's German. She is an incredible theremin player. Like you can't even believe how good she is. And she's way into it too. Like she has this piece that she composed called The Dragon, where she like plays the theremin and makes her hands look like dragon heads in the theremin space, and they're like really down low, like like it's so cool. She's like turned into an art form. And if I ever get to perform the theme song live in some venue, she's going to be first on the list of what musicians I call, because she's so badass.
That's awesome.
Check out her stuff. Like I think there might be stuff on YouTube. Carolina Ike, really incredible. If you're into theremin, she's
is that with a C? Carolina.
Carolina with a C, and then EYCK is her last name.
EYCK.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah.
I might be pronouncing that wrong, but
I will check that out as soon as I'm done.
She's incredible, man. Yeah. Yeah.
Good.
Well, yeah, Brandon, I think we've hit most of the stuff. I guess one thing I was wondering are there any other like artists that you enjoy like collaborating with directly, or I mean, other than maybe Jermaine for Moon Man? Like, is
he's
there
the
anybody
best,
else
man.
for the show that you've really enjoyed like working with or gotten an opportunity to kind of experiment musically with?
Let me think. So I don't get to like record the vocalists myself very often. I was there for the Jermaine record, but I was not there, say for when Tara Strong did the Summer in Tinkles song in my favorite episode, Total Recall.
Yes.
So like I will often mock them up with my own voice, and then the voice talent will be recorded either at Starburns or somewhere else. We recorded Jermaine over the phone. Basically, he was in New Zealand at the time.
Oh wow! Okay.
And they recorded all his lines for the show, and I think they had booked an hour with him, and I didn't know this, but they used 40 minutes like recording his lines for the show, and then they're like, "All right, Elder, you got 20 minutes to do this song." And I was like, "Man, he's singing like background vocals and stuff on this. Like, I need like an hour." But I just like, "All right, we're doing this. Let's do it." And luckily, the dude is like a ridiculously professional and ridiculously talented. Like, I think what you hear on there is his first take. And wow. he like jokingly did the delay on the space, right? Like he was doing a bit and I think he thought I would cut it off and just like put my own delay on it. But I was like, no way, man, this is so funny. I don't know what he thought. I don't want to attribute thoughts to him that aren't his own, but he's also just a rad dude. Like after the song came out and people were going nuts over it, he messaged me on Twitter and was like, "Hey man, great song. I think people are going to request it at shows." And I was like, "Oh, Jermaine." I was totally fanboying out. He's an awesome dude though. Like really, really cool guy. And he like whenever anyone tweets at him about the song or tweets him a cover of the song, he'll like retweet it to me, which is like totally doesn't have to do that, but so cool.
Yeah, man, that's great. I just Fly the Conchords was something that just for me just appeared out of nowhere.
Oh yeah,
like
this I think for a lot of people, man, it was like, who are these guys?
It's amazing music, and both of them are insanely talented.
Yeah.
Oscar winners. Muppets.
Yeah, that's right.
Brett, yeah.
Oh man, there's justice in this world.
I want to ask a few more questions, and then I swear I'm gonna let you go.
Oh man, I've got nothing else to do. So.
All right. Okay.
Let's do 3 hours.
We
can?
We can.
We're at an hour. We got 2 more hours left, guys.
This question is an hour question.
All right, I'll filibuster for an hour.
All right, get the phone book out. It's a hard-hitting question.
Bring it.
Ryan, what are you doing when you're not composing music?
Oh yeah,
amateur interview question.
A lot. I'm doing a lot. I have too many hobbies. So aside from I'm married, I have a wife and we have 2 cats, and we go to the gym and we go geocaching and all that stuff. Like I do the family stuff, but I also I'm obsessed with the TV show Survivor on CBS. I have a podcast about that. It's if I maybe I'll just plug it, although we're not recording this season, so I don't know. It's called Snakes, Rats, and Goats. Anyways, plug over. Where we talk about the show. I also am a super avid video gamer. PC gamer.
What are you playing these days?
So let's see. I mean, this is so nerdy, but believe me, it's even nerdy for PC gaming. When I was in college, I got obsessed with one of the very first MMOs, Asheron's Call. Do you guys remember that? It was kind of an EverQuest competitor.
was like a Baldur's Gate esque.
No, it was like EverQuest,
Okay,
like a
okay.
MMO.
Yeah.
Microsoft made it. It was like the other MMO at the time. And that game recently, like they shut the servers down last January, but there've been these like efforts to make private servers using emulators. So I've been kind of playing on those.
All right.
And the game is so old. It looks so terrible. It's so janky. Like the controls are just complete. The controls are actually broken, and as a result, the PvP is insanely fun because you can utilize the broken controls to do stuff in the game that was not intended by the developers.
Well, yeah, I won't say that that's super nerdy because I mean it probably is to some. But like I know I still know people who play Ultima Online.
Oh yeah,
Just
yeah.
just all the time. So I'll ask this: Are you when WoW came out and became super popular? How did you feel about it? Were you like, oh, this is for all
It's
the noobs?
kind of, it's complicated, right? So like I played WoW in beta. I was kind of into it. The thing about WoW that really always bothered me, and sort of the way that I describe it, is that WoW was super influenced by EverQuest.
Mhm.
The style of the game, the pace of the game, very EverQuesty. Asheron's Call is like super fast,
Hmm.
really fast paced. There's actual physics involved with spell casting, so you can dodge spells, physically move your character out of the way of spells and arrows and stuff. So the combat is way more active in Asheron's Call, and you run like really fast. You're like Sonic the Hedgehog right away. um, and there are no mounts because you literally run so fast in the game. And that was always like, I'd play WoW and I'd be like, God, it takes me forever to get from one zone to the other.
Auto run. All right.
Yeah,
Let me go
so
make some
boring.
coffee.
Like they like purposefully added in boring shit so that you'd have to play the game longer. I swear to God, like that's the modern MMO design.
It's a strategy. I mean,
Is absolutely, time sinks are a huge part of modern MMO design, and I blame EverQuest, but I also blame World of Warcraft for like perfecting the EverQuest model. There is an alternate universe where this is definitely boring your listeners. I don't care. I love Asheron's Call. There's an alternate universe where Asheron's Call was more popular than EverQuest, and in that universe, World of Warcraft is the best game ever made. But unfortunately, we don't live in that universe.
No, we live in the universe where World of Warcraft cannibalizes every idea from every other MMO, whether it's Guild Wars 2.
Yeah.
Like just like, oh, you guys did that. I tell you what,
I think it's time for a patch. Let's run an update.
Yeah.
Time for an expansion.
Exactly. Yeah.
Do you? I'll throw this out there. Do you play Civ 6? Do you ever play Civilization?
I played Civ 5 or 4. No, I haven't played 6, but I played one of them a little bit. I started playing it. I kind of was into it. I was kind of hooked, and then I read about this ability to like culture bomb or something, where I don't know, it was like a strategy, right? Where you could like take over a whole other civilization just by like sending out like a big culture bomb. And I was like, oh, that sounds fun. I'm going to try that. And I just did that. Like I did game after game after game trying to like perfect that. And then I was like, okay, I'm done. I move on from games pretty quickly. Like literally it's just Asheron's Call is the only game that I like play regularly.
Come back
I will
to every time. Let
me give you a modern game that I actually highly recommend. It's one of my favorite games in a long time. It's called Slay the Spire. It's in early access. It's a card. It's like a card. It's sort of like, do you guys know the game Dominion? It's a deck building tabletop game. It's sort of like Dominion mixed with Binding of Isaac. So it's like a roguelike where you build a deck and you remove cards from your deck and you progress through the dungeon. And as soon as you lose, you're out. And you got to start over. But like the idea is like, there's so many ways to like craft your deck throughout moving your way through the dungeon that when you get to the end and your deck is like so awesome and then you win, you're like, man, I wish I could play more with that deck. But they like time it perfectly. Your deck is just getting perfect right when you're about to win. It's so good. It's so addictive. Like I got the game and I put like 100 hours in 2 weeks, like right away. It was so good.
Do you find that you shy away from some of the like the major publishers and stick to some of these these indie developers or in
No,
early
I'll
access?
play whatever if it appeals to me.
Yeah.
I'm a big card gamer. Like one of my big things that I did, like I actually played on the Magic the Gathering professional tour once. Like I was a
Ooh.
pretty hardcore Magic player.
Wait, why are
Starting
we
in
talking to
college.
you about music? We could have
Yeah.
been talking to you about your professional Magic tour.
Well, this was in 1998 when everyone was really bad. So don't think that I'm actually good at Magic. I've had my moments, but I used to play a crap ton of Magic. So that's like one of the reasons why I like Slay the Spire so much. Is like I love card games. I played a ton of Hearthstone. I play Eternal card game, which is like Hearthstone. Like I've tried almost all the Hearthstone variants now, like all the ripoffs, and
Yeah.
I like Eternal the best, but they're all pretty good. But yeah, Magic, they'll never. That's the best game ever made. Better than chess.
Oh, I, I was never a Magic player, and actually I didn't play it for the first time until like 2010.
Yeah,
I was working like a night shift with this guy who was like, "You never played Magic? We should play Magic sometime."
yeah,
And I was past the phase of my life where I'm like, "Oh, that's not cool."
yeah, yeah,
So I tried it out, and I'm like, "This is fun. I'm not
yeah.
gonna spend money on it, but if he brings a
That
card,
that's good because as soon as you take that step, like it's really hard to spend any less than like $20,000 on Magic. It's the most insanely expensive hobby you can possibly have. I mean, I bought plane tickets for Magic. Like I flew all over the country to play Magic. Like I paid money for a plane ticket to go to a tournament and go 0-4 drop. Like
Oh God.
I mean, I had some pitiful weekends in Columbus, Ohio. Like I was into it though. Like it's so fun. And honestly, I like some of my best friends I've ever met, I met through playing Magic the Gathering. Like guys that I've been in their weddings and like,
huh.
great friends.
Now the natural extension of that is for you to go on the Pro League of Legends tour.
Oh man, that game is too twitchy for me. Believe it or not, there's a lot of crossover between Magic players and League of Legends. I mean, I live literally like a half mile from the League of Legends campus, the Riot campus here
Oh,
in LA. So when I'm in LA, I live here. But
yeah.
a lot of the guys that play in the local stores, play Magic in the local stores, are Riot employees.
Oh
There's a
wow.
lot of Magic playing Riot people. They have tournaments there actually.
Huh.
Yeah.
Are you Travis and I, we've talked about the Overwatch League starting up.
Yeah.
Have you gone to any tournaments, or have you watched them live, or is
For
that even
Overwatch or
yeah,
what?
yeah, for
Uh,
Overwatch?
I played that when it first came out, but again, I'm not big on
The
sort of
shooters.
twitchy team-based competition stuff. If I do sort of PvP, it'll be more like a card game where it's more like cerebral and not physical.
Yeah.
Like, I just I've never been like that good with a mouse. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Gotcha.
We play support characters usually when we play Overwatch.
okay,
so
yeah.
that-
Maybe I should have just taken that up. That would maybe I would have been more.
Can't aim worth it or worth the shit. It's the glasses. It's the glass. I can't do it.
Yeah, yeah.
I have one more question, and Travis will lead us out. It's so one of the things you say in the Sync blog
Mhm.
interview is advice for people who want to be composers, and it's
Yeah.
make friends with people who are creators, invest in sample libraries, move to a
Mhm.
major hub like Los Angeles,
Yep.
London, or New York, and write lots of music. So what I wanted to ask was, because a lot of people, like I'm from LA originally,
Yeah.
but I moved away. I was like, I don't want to be famous. I don't need to
Sure.
do this stuff.
Okay.
And then we started a
Meanwhile,
podcast.
then I
Yeah.
started a podcast to talk to people a lot. Anyway, so I'm now not near a major city, and because of my
Sure.
job, I can't move back. What kind of advice would you give to aspiring creatives in whatever form, music, writing, to kind of make a name for themselves or get discovered if they can't necessarily move back to a major node?
Oh man, that's tough. I don't want to pretend like I know. That's the thing. Like I have ideas, but like I don't have experience with that. So it's hard for me to give you like a really good answer because I'd be a little bit guessing. But I will say this: like I've been some other composers have reached out to me that are from other states. They don't live in LA, and I've become friends with a couple people who wanted, early on when Rick and Morty was just like not quite as popular. I had more time to like respond to people who emailed me.
Yeah.
But I've met people and sort of, maybe if their stuff is really good, I've recommended them for jobs that I couldn't work on or whatever. But I think, luckily due to the internet now, you can like introduce yourself to people. You got to be cool about it though. Like it's really a fine line. Like don't do a form letter, don't BCC a bunch of composers. Like, you know, they like they don't want to go to your website to listen to your stuff. Like I'll listen to people's stuff. I probably do it more than most composers do, I have to imagine. But for me, it's kind of like, oh, I might find the diamond in the rough, right?
Yeah.
And I have found a couple of people who are very good this way. Um, I've also found people who need to keep working, but you know, I would say like if there's a way for you to find a connection with someone that isn't just I need something from you or I want something from you,
Mhm.
that also isn't just a thinly veiled version of I want something from you, right? Like if you like, for example, you heard me on this podcast, whatever. I'm open to people emailing me, but if you heard me on this podcast talking about Asheron's Call and you were like, oh, I played that game once, I'm going to email him about that. And maybe then we'll become friends and he can hook me up with a job. Right. Like I'm probably going to see through that, So like it's, one thing I always recommend, and it's so dumb, but there's a book called How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's literally over 100 years old, and I'm not using literally in an exaggerative sense. I think it was written in like 1904. Uh, Fantastic book. I wish I had read it when I was in junior high because it changed my life. It changed my ability to talk to people, to interact with people, to understand what people are looking for in a conversation with another person. They're not looking to hear about you. They're looking to talk about themselves. Like I just spent, and this is just coming from someone who just spent an hour and 20 minutes talking about themselves on a podcast. But like the more you can, like, you don't want to grill them and be like, well, what about this? It's not an interview when you meet someone new, right?
Right.
Like that, getting someone to talk about themselves by interviewing them is annoying. Just act like a normal person around them. People who do this stuff for a living, they're not like gods, like you guys talk to Ryan Ridley. He's a normal guy. He's an awesome, awesome, normal guy. Like, and if you just act like a normal person, like a lot of times that's enough to get someone to like want to talk to you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But easier
advice.
said than done, right? It's easier said than done.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well-
yeah, it is easier. It's I'm terrible like it's face to face and networking wise necessarily. If it's just like me and somebody else, I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm
Yeah.
awkward.
Yeah, no, I know. Well, read this book because I think it'll give you at least a starting point for how to improve that. Like
Yeah,
it's really, really, really important in the survivor world. It's called social game, right? Like your
yeah,
ability to interact with people and engender trust from people. Like trust is so important if you're providing a service, which is what a composer is doing. People want to trust you, and the more you can just be the kind of person who people like to trust, the more successful you're going to be.
Very,
Eh,
very cool. So Ryan, we've covered a gambit of issues here, or topics, but I want to say thank you for joining us. And is there a good place that if people want to kind of follow other projects that you're working on, or kind of where's a good place where people can keep up with whatever new things that you have going on
so
outside
I
of Rick
think
and Morty?
Yeah, I think Twitter probably. I mean, my website, I try to keep it up to date, but like I don't know. Twitter seems fun. People can tweet at me and stuff. So like, if you want to like, if you want to tweet, if you want to interact with me or see what I'm thinking or doing, like Twitter's probably the best right now. Um, I need to update my SoundCloud. It's been too long. I'm hoping at some point soon there'll be some way for people to get their hands on more of the music from the show. Right now, it's kind of hard to find a lot of stuff, just due to just business reasons. Like I can't, I can't just put it up on my SoundCloud or whatever. So, but hopefully that's going to change soon. I don't know any details yet, but I'm still looking into that. And
Cool.
in the meantime, yeah, just my Twitter and stuff, I guess.
Awesome.
All right. And then you and Ben Bromfield with Boss Baby back in business.
Yeah.
On
Yeah.
Net-
Ben
on Netflix.
Bromfield, perfect call for that, right? So many bees. Yeah, April something. It's for kids, but I gotta say, like, it's like one of my friends. Do you guys know do you guys know the Channel 101 series Yacht Rock? It's kind of got famous for inventing a genre of music, or like naming a genre of music.
I have heard it. I've heard that term before.
Okay.
I can't say I know. Like
All
I
right,
couldn't
so
spout it off.
So yeah, one of my good friends, JD Riznar, was one of the creators of Yacht Rock, and he was a writer on Boss Baby. And the writing staff for that show is very good, like surprisingly good for a kid show. And it shows. Like there's some amazing jokes. You gotta wade through a bunch of kid stuff to get to it, but it's pretty good. And if like I found that like 10% of people are skeeved out by this talking baby. But if you're in the 90% who think it's fun, I do recommend the show, especially if you have kids. It'll be fun.
As a parent, I have to say any show that can be kind of geared towards kids but appeal to an adult audience also.
Yeah.
Sometimes they'll put in those jokes that kind of go, over the kids' heads but hit squarely with the parents.
100%.
Those
yeah,
are some of my favorites. So
there's 4 or 5 of those per episode of this show, easy.
Excellent.
And like a lot of the episodes are like not parodies, but like sort of idiomatic to like a movie or a TV show that you've seen before. So like the kids are obviously not going to know what they are, but when you see it, you'll get it, and it's pretty good. It's pretty well done.
Awesome.
It's been an amazing experience working on this show. Really fun show.
It's like watching MST3K with my 6-year-old. He doesn't get any of the the references. He just watches.
But the movies are probably kind of good for it. Some of the movies are pretty good for a 6-year-old. I love MST3K. So good.
Yeah. I love that they're back.
I know.
All right.
Well, thanks guys. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
It was way fun.
Yeah, keep up all the awesome work, and we'll look forward to season 4 whenever that does happen.
Yeah. I wish I knew. I don't.
We're not fishing for it.
Not fishing.
No.
Just
and listen,
fact.
I just realized there's probably people thinking like, oh, April 1st is coming up. Don't get your hopes up. Let me just tell you that
you
much.
Got your sauce. Be happy.
I do have one more question. This is
sure.
Brandon,
there's one more question. Do you want to hang out sometime and be my best friend? I put
well,
that...
you live in LA, right?
No, I live in Tampa, but my parents live in LA.
Well, if you're in LA and I'm in LA, like we can get coffee or something. Sure.
Oh my God, you heard it. So I'm leaving that
recorded.
I only live here part time, so the odds of us both being here pretty slim.
Slim to none.
Pretty slim, but
it's
maybe
okay, I'll find you. No,
Okay.
There you go. If I'm ever in Tampa, I wish I was in Tampa right now.
It's nice and warm here.
Yeah, it's cold in LA, believe it or not.
It's not warm here.
And it's really cold in Minnesota, where I live most of the time.
Yeah. You can come down, Snowbird.
There you go. There you go. Yeah. All right, guys.
Awesome.
Thanks again, man. Appreciate it.
Yep. Take care.
That Ryan Elder.
Hot cha 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 cha.
What a guy. What a guy.
I want to first of all thank you so much to him again for talking to us. That was really awesome, and I totally had I had a crush the entire time. But
I think you still have a crush, Brandon.
Yeah, I do. I'm pretty much like his own, maybe not his only group. He should have more groupies if he's like I shouldn't be his only one. Anyway,
Call to action, Unity. Let's get Ryan Elder more groupies. All right.
For our patrons who are watching the video, you are gonna get a special like 30 or 20 to 30 extra minute treat where we talk about his love of video games a little bit more in detail.
Yes,
and
in
like
amazing
nerdy
detail.
We get pretty nerdy, and Travis like we gotta cut that, and I was like, no, it'll be fine. And then I listened to it during editing, like, nope, yeah, we gotta cut that.
Yeah, so I will keep that in the video version, just as another draw for you folks to come support the show on Patreon.
Yeah, so again, hit him up. He is on Twitter. He's on SoundCloud. You can read his Survivor podcast too if you want. But Ryan Elder Music on Twitter.
All right. We still have a couple of segments that we need to hash out here on this episode. So let's get right into it. It's time for this week's Blood Dome Battle League. What a matchup we've got this week.
What are you?
I'm just trying new things, Brandon. What if
a Vin Scully?
Ladies and gentlemen.
Rest in peace, Vin Scully.
We should just do terrible impressions of famous sports commentators for Blood Dome Battle League from here on out.
Yeah, definitely. So this week we had Cousin Nikki versus Pencilvester. But before we get into that, the one shout out we had on Twitter was from Scooty Puff Sr., a good old Futurama reference there. That he had a good idea for Blood Dome Battle League, Morty Combat. And why didn't we think of that? Why didn't we think of that?
Morty Combat.
Fight.
Your next music assignment has just reared its ugly head, Brandon.
Oh God. So Travis, before we get into the actual results, why don't you read us the tale that you've written down?
Oh, all right.
Cousin Nikki versus Pencilvester. So
here we go. For those of you maybe unaware with Cousin Nikki and Pencilvester, it was an afternoon like so many others across Earth Dimension C-145. The Smith family was on lockdown after Grandpa Rick had discovered a strain of alien parasites that somehow infected their home. Nearly every time you turned around, a new friend or family member seemed to appear, complete with detailed memories of the great times spent with the Smith tribe. Ooh. Cousin Nikki was one of these family members, but he knew who he really was, and there was no doubt deep down that he was a parasite. He needed this family to believe that he was real, for his sake and for the sake of his fellow parasites. Cousin Nikki had to convince the smartest person in the galaxy, Rick Sanchez, that he and the other parasites were real. There was just one problem, Brandon.
What was
it? The moment Rick realized that there were parasites in the house, he did a swift head count of the people that he knew were real, and he wrote the number 6 on a sheet of paper and then set to work trying to determine who was and who was not a parasite. But that was hours ago. And since then, dozens of new parasites had spawned, and as Rick grew closer to discovering who the parasites were, the fear of being found out began to set in. A parasite will do just about anything to survive. And as Rick emerged from the garage with a sci-fi weapon of unknown origin, the parasite's panic meant it was every last parasite for itself. Cousin Nikki knew it was time to act. If he could only get to that paper with a 6 on it, he might be able to alter it amidst all this commotion. He started across the living room as parasites dodged from Rick and now also Morty. He cringed as desperate parasites attacked each other in an attempt to prove that they were real and on Rick's side.
Oh, God.
"Hey, I'm walking here," Cousin Nicky shouted as two wrestling parasites fell in front of him, altering his path to the paper. Finally, Cousin Nicky found himself within arm's reach of the paper. He knew that even adding a 1 before the 6 would mean life for 10 of the perishing brethren.
Oh.
Cousin Nicky spotted a pencil on the ground and reached down to grab it. Just before he could pick it up, the pencil shot from the ground and drove its sharpened tip deep into Cousin Nicky's eye. Pencilvester laughed out a bold, "Nice try pulling a fast one on me," as the image of Cousin Nicky melted away to reveal the wrinkled remains of a parasite. Only a faint, "I'm walking here," could be heard as the memory of Cousin Nicky faded away. As for Pencilvester, he bolted away towards a nearby backpack where he slipped into a front pocket amidst the other pencils and markers. He thought to himself, I'm sure a parasite like me could do wonderful things at Harry Herpson High School. All right.
So he does when he thinks to himself, he doesn't do it he doesn't have a funny voice.
He doesn't have a funny voice. His inner monologue is deep and methodical.
Yeah. Anyway, I think that you can tell from that wonderful story. Thank you, Travis. Thank you for that wonderful story. Woo! Applause. That Pencilvester wins this battle over there on Facebook, 34 to 66%. Is that right? Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Pencilvester wins. Over on Twitter, 21 to 79. Pencilvester takes it again.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
He's the man.
And when we did this
parasite or the
when we did this, I thought for sure it was going to be a far closer Blood Dome battle, and I was shocked. I think I'm every week I'm like, let's have a battle. Let's make it a battle where people get into a battle with each other to see like, oh no, you're wrong. But for the most part, everyone's
let's make it a battle where people get into a battle to battle.
Yeah, let's do a Blood Dome battle league battle dome.
Well, and I mean, I get what you're saying. It's I would like to see it be close. I don't want it to be one-sided every week. And I think the fact that both of these characters were parasites, for me, it was a toss-up. I mean, a lot of the times the Blood Dome Battle League is like a popularity contest, and some of the more popular characters tend to get the votes. And so maybe that means Pencilvester's more of a fan favorite than Cousin Nicky. Sorry, Ryan Ridley. But it's I really thought it could have gone either way. If people were really into Cousin Nicky, maybe they thought that he could have just broken that pencil between his fingers or something like that. I don't know. It could have gone either way with this one, but definitely an overwhelming win for Pencilvester in this.
Yes. So with all that in mind, having said that, we want an even matchup. Here is another one that I will be that I hope will be closer, but probably will not be because I'm just wrong. Like if there's a poll about whether I'm going to be wrong about the results, I'll probably be right about losing.
Sure.
Okay, next episode, Principal Vagina versus Mr. Goldenfold, the battle of the educators here next time on the Blood Dome Battle League. We don't need to listen to that whole thing.
Yeah, but, no, that's enough. We have time for just one more short segment here, and that's listener suggestions and short outs. Thanks again to everybody who listens, watches, supports the show in your various ways. And some of you send us some correspondence throughout the week, be that on Discord, Twitter, Facebook, emails, and then we get a review or two. Brandon, how are the reviews looking?
Oh yeah, we have a couple more on iTunes here. First up, RNG Thoughts. That's a nerd thing. You wouldn't know, Travis. You're not a nerd.
No
but
way.
The first one says, how unofficial are they at this point, really? Which I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. I'm not gonna do it. I downloaded iTunes to leave this rating. I hope you know my pain. Brandon and Bravis and Trandon are just these guys, you know. Whether you just found out about Rick and Morty or have been watching since season 1, these guys provide a laid-back and entertaining experience for all fan levels. They're great during the seasons for Easter eggs, speculation, and general hype affirmation. But their true power lies in their off-season, providing a platform for conversation about Rick and Morty during the long and lonely vacuum. If you're so excited about the show that you just can't hold it any longer, give this a listen and see if it scratches the itch.
Wow, that's a rock solid review right there.
Scratches the itch. Herpes. Next up, next review.
Not a sponsor.
Yeah. Thank you, RNG Thoughts for
vagina.
This next one is if you enjoy discussions about buttholes. Speaking of things that itch, by Justin DeRay. These gentlemen keep you entertained. Big fans of RAM and podcasts will enjoy these fellas. They do a pretty solid job. Don't mind the endless usage of the term like, Travis and me. I counted about a dozen likes in the last 10 minutes that I said. So if you do mind, then get over it. I bet these guys bump donuts every time they meet. That is true. But that's okay. I'd smash Summer also. It's BS we can't because cartoons tend not to age. She's perpetually 17 for the remainder of the series. I also go by the call sign Scooty Puff Sr. Hey, Scooty Puff Sr. I just talked about you. Love you guys. Now be funny. Smiley face.
The pressure to be funny. I can't take it, Brandon. Thank you.
Can't do it.
I like your review and stuff.
The first one doesn't count because you liked his review.
Yeah.
You like.
I like it. I'm trying, folks. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Okay. So
we have a couple of Tylers to talk about before we get out of here.
It's your turn first, Travis.
Okay. So, should I talk about my Tyler or our Tyler?
No, our Tyler. Let's talk about our Tyler.
Let's talk about our Tyler. And that's Tyler Tigno, as his Twitter handle might. Well, it's his name on Twitter. And so he left a very nice video over on the Twitter sphere, just kind of talking about his appreciation for the show and shouting out why other people should listen to the podcast and things like that. We made sure to retweet that ourselves, so hopefully if you're following us on Twitter, you got a chance to see it. But this is exactly what I'm talking about with Unity. The overwhelming support that we receive sometimes, and just how flattering it is, I think, to have people go out of their way, take even a couple of minutes to share the show with people. I've had people come up to me and be like, "Oh, hey, like I just told someone else." And these are like people like I work with that are like, "Oh, someone mentioned Rick and Morty," and I was like, "Oh, that guy's got a podcast. You should totally go listen to it." So anytime somebody is sharing the show, whether it's online or word of mouth, we just truly appreciate it. So thank you, Tyler, for doing that with a video. Very impressive stuff.
Yes, absolutely. Now moving on to your Tyler.
My Tyler.
So your friend Tyler that you've known for a very, very long time,
since we were wee ones in elementary school.
Yes. So you and he have talked about how he was like, Brandon singing, like I wanna slit his throat.
I don't think it went down quite like that. But I mean, whatever.
Even if he's not a parasite, I want to see him bleed out. That's that's verbatim what he said to you, I think. Anyway, so last episode I did that shitty rap. I put out that shitty rap, and he sent me he sent us a very long email, but it was for me, just basically saying that he appreciated it and he thought it was good, and that I'll put this here. I know that's okay. No offense, but the interstitial songs just don't communicate your talent effectively. I know that's intentional, but intentionally bad lol is different than intentionally bad, but I could beat your shit if I really wanted to. And then he called me Bob Ross something.
Yeah.
There's more
some sort of, analogy about Bob Ross painting, and anyway, he thought you did a good job on that. And I'm glad that a friend from my way back past and my friend from my current past can bridge this gap and Bob Ross each other, whatever it means online. So, but thank you, Tyler, for the very nice and hilarious email.
Thank you, Travis and Tyler.
I will still claim ownership.
Yes. And I think that's really all we have this week. Well, I just want to say to Tyler, our Tyler, Unity, everyone out there who sends us all your sauce packet photos.
Oh, so many sauce packets. We got a ton.
Billy King Triple X, everyone out there. Thank you, really, from the bottom of our hearts. Thank you so much for supporting us and for listening to us talk for another 20 or so minutes after the Ryan Elder interview. So, yeah. That's all I got.
All right. Well, we hope you enjoyed this episode. We hope you enjoy the interview. We'll do our darndest to find some more people to talk to. And next week, what's the episode next week, Brandon? In 2 weeks' time. Hold on.
I think it's Rick Potion number 9.
Oh, you're right. The departure from C-137, as it were. So
I'm a flu hating rapper.
So go watch Rick Potion number 9. Send us your thoughts on that. Send us questions. I know we ask a lot of questions from Reddit's previous rewatches and things like that, but go watch the episode and send us questions. We would love to discuss your thoughts on this episode.
Absolutely.
On the next podcast. So go do that, and then we will be back in a couple weeks with Rick Potion number 9 ready to go.
That's right. Flu hate rappers out. I'm
All right.
Brandon.
I'm Travis. Thanks for listening. Mustache